All right, Bill, how are you doing tonight? It is
Good,
January
good.
9th, 2025. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing as good as I can. I apologize for last night. We had at my southern bunker, we had an internet outage last night, so it's all on me. But as you know, Bill, I try to stay in the winter. I try to stay close to where the Claremont County politicians are, which is in the south and better weather. So,
Yeah,
so
I would
I'm
much
here.
rather be there right now.
Did you get anything? I got you get anything great for Christmas? This is the first time we did something. We're doing something since Christmas. You get anything good for Christmas?
Couple tools. That's about it.
So I
The older
got
you get, the older you get, the less desirable the Christmas present. Way it
I got
works.
my. Let's see if I can stand up and show this. I got my new. You know the "Don't Tread on Me" flags.
Yeah.
The new thing, the Trump era new thing, Hodge twins deal is this. If you can see it, it is the "Don't Snack on Me." This is the new flags because we don't want people eating our cats or eating our dogs. Okay, so we are here tonight to talk about years of my good buddy Jeff Corcoran, and we don't. These are designed just to be open-ended discussions. We really don't talk much before them. We talked for like 3 minutes before we started here, and I think between the two of us, we probably have different stories and different things we can talk about involving Jeff Corcoran. Hopefully, we'll be a little bit chronological. But before we get going, maybe we want to do a little introduction of just who is Jeff Corcoran in case anybody's there that doesn't know who he is, what his role is, and what he came from. Uh, you want to start off with just giving a little background on your perspective of who is Jeff Corcoran? Where is he? It'll be like a deposition. Who is Jeff Corcoran? Where did he come from?
So, what's interesting about Jeff Corcoran is he wasn't previously on the Central Committee when I was on started, and I didn't know who he was until we got the call from Linda Fraley that told James Kidwell and I that, hey, we're going to support Jeff as chairman of the Central Committee. So Jeff ran in the last election, got his seat for Goshen. They did some underhanded stuff, and he became the vice chair of Goshen. And then we were told to support him, and we called everybody and told them to vote for Jeff Corcoran and David Carter, and they did, and Jeff Corcoran became chairman. What's interesting about him is he used to be the mayor of Madeira years ago. He ran for commissioner in the mid 70s, and Chris will show the article where it says that he wasn't even a Republican then, but he likes to brag and say that he worked on the Reagan. He was a Reagan delegate and all this stuff, but I'm confused how he could be a Reagan delegate when he didn't run as a Republican for office when he was running for office back then. So there's a lot of inconsistencies with what he says, to the point where I've had to deem him almost a pathological liar because he makes stuff up, and that explains partially why people like Simpson and other folks on the Central Committee, they all get along really well because they're pathological
Cut from the
liars.
same cloth.
Correct.
So I don't know that he's a whole different animal than Greg Simpson. I would say Greg Simpson is absolutely a pathological liar. I don't know about Jeff Corcoran. But just for background here, so, people probably that listen to us know there's a Central Committee, there's a Democrat one and a Republican one. You run for it, you get on it. There, in the first meeting, you elect officers, a chair and a vice chair of the Central Committee, a chair and a vice chair of the party, basically. And so what happens is, what's kind of dumb about it is you really have no idea who the people are that if you're new on the committee,
Right.
and if you're told. And I think what you're hitting on is one thing is people not enough can be said about how Linda Fraley is the puppet master behind the scenes on so much that goes on. And do you think that Linda Fraley has any buyer's remorse on Jeff Corcoran, or she loves her some Jeff Corcoran?
I think Linda Fraley's to the point where she is in her own world, kind of like Mark DeColvey now, and they're on easy street vacation. No, I've not heard from Linda Fraley, or anyone I know has heard from her. She's kind of disappeared from the light. So I would hope that she has remorse, but I think ego takes place of remorse. People to admit that you make a mistake would require you not to have an ego. And that's one of the biggest problems with all these people, including Jeff. Jeff's biggest problem is his ego, where people they just cannot admit that they made a mistake. And David Carter was a mistake. You had a guy that didn't come to meetings, didn't know what he was doing, admitted that he didn't know what he was doing, and we put him over the party chair. He's the chairman of the Republican Party, but didn't know anything, had no background in this at all.
Well, what really happened was Jeff Corcoran, there's always been a chair and a central committee chair. And so before Jeff Corcoran, the chair was, party chair was Greg Simpson, the chaplain. And Dennis Cooper was the central committee chair. Before that, David Ubel was the chair and Howard Hines was the central committee chair. And what happened with Jeff Corcoran, as soon as he became the central committee chair, he basically took over everything. It's unique now that the central committee chair, David Painter, is supposed to be the party chair. And I think historically, the central committee chair operated meetings, like Dennis, basically ran the meetings, and the party chair set the direction and was the kind of overall direction setter. And that's totally different now. Now is Jeff Corcoran basically does that whenever he wants. And the other officers, if you talk to them, you could say your personal experience, the other officers today, if you talk to them, a lot of them will empathize with that. They can't stand Jeff Corcoran. They want to get rid of Jeff Corcoran, but I don't know if they talk out of both sides of their mouths.
Well, that happened.
They're all plotting to get rid of Jeff Corcoran behind his back, and everybody knows it, and I'm sure he knows it, but then they never actually do anything.
Well, that's kind of what happened. What really irked me about Alan Freeman. So when we went, I put together with Louisa an effort to remove Jeff Corcoran. And I had emailed the execs to say, hey, we're going to follow the process. You guys vote and to hold a special meeting for an official trial, which is technically the way that it should be done. There should be a trial where I present facts as to why I want to remove this officer. Right. Yeah. They don't follow that process. We did in Union Township, but they didn't want to follow that process. So the executive committee met. Alan Freeman told me he was going to vote to remove Jeff Corcoran. And we got in there and we were a couple of votes off. And Alan Freeman was one of the votes that he said he wanted to keep Jeff. So these people, when they say that they want to get rid of Jeff Corcoran, I do believe they talk out of both sides of their mouth, because they get, when the stuff comes, when things come to fruition, they bail. And they bail out of fear. One of the things I've learned about these people is if there's any chance of it coming back on them, they don't want any part of it. Whether that means they're going to stand up for right or wrong, they'd rather not stand up for right if it prevents them from hurting them. So Alan Freeman running for clerk of courts, he doesn't, even though he ran unopposed, he still didn't want to be part of any effort that could potentially damage his name. And that's the most disgusting part.
The funny thing about you say about that is doing the right thing or the honest thing is the thing that in the Claremont GOP a lot would damage your name because right. So it's just stunning. If anybody, whatever you think about politics and the character of people in politics, it's worse than you think. And it's at all levels. It's down to the local level, all the way up to, I'm sure, the federal level. People have told me they train them locally. But I want to jump back, by the way, because I first encountered the Corcorans when Claire came on the scene. And at the time, talked a lot with Tom Brinkman, who was the state rep. And when it came up like Corcorans, he immediately would go into these things about how they literally got run out of Madeira. What a disaster. Jeff Corcoran's terrible. They're awful. Okay. And then at the same time, I was hearing that, about the Corcoran mystique in Hamilton County, which Tom Brinkman's been involved in Hamilton County Republican politics forever. Okay. Then I was hearing all the Goshen people in the other ear telling me how horrible they were in Goshen, how, they're like the king and the queen. They think they're like above everybody, the horse bullshit, the Claire on the trustees, and then they basically, people tell me basically got run off the trustees in Goshen because of their behavior. And then when Jeff come on the scene for Central Committee, Brinkman and other people in Hamilton County would be just, we cannot believe that you guys would let Jeff Corcoran be a prominent role in your party. Okay. Because if anybody would have vetted him with people in Hamilton County, they would be, if you want to go blue, Jeff is your man. If you want to move your county in a blue direction, Jeff is your man. So that's a history. You said, Bill, that I was going to put up this. The next kind of thing I'll get to is at some point they landed in Claremont County, and then Jeff Corcoran. I'm going to throw this up. It's not the article, but it's the graphic that I had on my Facebook. It's quote from a Cincinnati Post article. But then Jeff Corcoran runs for commissioner in Claremont County as a Democrat in 1976. And this is right after the election. There was a Post article where his quotes in the article are, "I do know I will pick a party next time," because he ran as an independent. And then he says, "I assume I pulled most of my support from the Democrats." And so there's a set of articles that you told me that I thought you said Tina Tolan originally discovered or something like that.
Yeah, I actually had to go to down to Union Terminal, and I had to pull it on microfilm.
So just on the Jeff Corcoran thing back there. Was there anything else? There's something in those articles, and maybe you can remember. It's just popping in my head right now, where Jeff Corcoran was tied into Joe DeCourcy in the auditor's office in Hamilton County, and was involved in something involving Bosom Nissan that had some connection to Claire Corcoran's family. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember reading about that. So apparently Claire's family owned Bosom Nissan, and Jeff worked for the auditor's office as a, I forget the title. It was like kind of in the appraisal, something to do with appraisals.
Stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a question about him cutting them some sort of a break. So yeah, that was in one of those articles. It's just interesting how that stuff works. I mean, to me, the sad part is we just put anybody over leadership. I mean, we just didn't even put any thought. We just put some random people we didn't know into leadership. And I'm not sitting on the back here saying, I'm any better. I was just as guilty as everybody else supporting that ignorance. And it was a huge mistake. And I learned a valuable lesson. Lesson one is don't trust what Linda Fraley puts forward, because she doesn't know what she's doing when it comes to politics. She claims that she does, but just because you've been an auditor for 6,000 years doesn't mean that you know anything about politics, especially when you get pissed off when people don't want to do what you want to do. So you start cutting them at the knees. So, I made a mistake. And then when I learned I made a mistake, I came back to try to fix it, which is why I removed him. And that's what we need to do. Whether you're a political figure or you're on central committee, it's okay to make a mistake. But when you make a mistake, come back and try to fix your mistake. Learn from it and repair the damage. Right. Unfortunately, we failed. I mean, I got into you weren't there that night, but Jeff wanted to be the chair over his own trial. And I had to scream at him.
That would be typical justice with Jeff Corcoran. The guy for being a lawyer, he has no concept of justice or fair play or due process.
I had to yell at him to the point where he got so mad I wouldn't shut up. He grabbed his coat and he told Claire we're leaving, and they walked out of the meeting, and we did it, and Byron took over. But the fact is, he tried to, if it weren't for me throwing a big tantrum on the floor, he was going to hear his own case. I was like, that's not happening.
Well, he got, the whole thing. One of the things is, if anybody gets involved in the Central Committee, you have to come in cynical and suspicious of everyone. There will be people that you would think. One of the things you find is, I found this when I first started getting involved is you'd be like, people act like they're your best friends, that you barely know them, and they act like you're really good friends with you. They try to get you under their wing. They kind of probably lead you to believe they can show you how it works. Do not effing trust these people. Linda Fraley would be a perfect example of this. Anybody who's been around on a committee for a long time, do not trust them. I'm not saying that all those people are bad. I'm just saying you're better to start off from a perspective of, people need to earn your trust, not that you say, "Oh, they seem nice and they're here for the
And I
same
don't.
reason I am." They're just remember, most of these people, especially if they're in elected office, assume they're there for themselves, to pad their own nest, to get their pensions bigger, not because they give a rat's ass about conservative principles. They're going to fight for anything or anything like that.
Well, I can tell you, nobody on that committee should feel bad about being duped. I was duped. I allowed myself to be duped into it, and you know, once I realized and started going against the grain, you saw what happened. You know, it became excommunication territory. Yeah,
So,
I mean, and that's fine.
I want to mention one thing about the Bosom Nissan. I should have pulled the article up thing, but Corcoran was, accused of, doing a funky valuation, and then there was some tie to Claire at the time, because I think it was before they were married, and but it was when Joe DeCourcy was the auditor, and people might not know. So in Hamilton County, it was all red, and it started to fall apart when Joe DeCourcy got involved in a scandal. He was the auditor called the Friends of Joe scandal, where property records had an FOJ on some of them. And that was a code to the people's staff that it was a friend of Joe DeCourcy and to give them a lower property value. And it was back when there were still paper records. So it was not hard to prove this. It wasn't like hit the delete key on the hard drive or something.
Right.
And so when that all came to light, that whole scandal that he was giving lower property values and the records were marked, the Republican Party in Hamilton County stood by Joe DeCourcy, ran him again. Okay. And then ultimately, I don't know if he was the very first, but what's his face? Who was the auditor that just retired there?
Dusty Rhodes.
Dusty Rhodes became like the first Democrat official in Hamilton County, but it was because of a scandal where instead of the Republicans immediately saying, we got a clean house. Like, for example, if you had an auditor that spent a lot of their winters on vacation in Florida, or you had a prosecutor that vacations for most of the time, you should want to say, we need to clean house. That is not the right way for people that represent our brand, Republicans, to be representing. And but it doesn't surprise me. It surprised me, but it didn't surprise me that Jeff Corcoran has some history tied to Joe DeCourcy in Hamilton County.
I'm just looking at a few of these comments. So one of the things we're looking into right now, and I believe there may be some truth to this, but we got to validate it. I don't think the committee chair has to be on Central Committee. The party chair doesn't have to be on Central Committee, I don't believe, but that's something that we're looking into right now. I don't believe it has to be somebody on the Central Committee. In Hamilton County, historically they've had people outside. The ORP, the chairman of the ORP doesn't have to be on the state Central Committee to be a chair. So we're looking into that, and because one of the things that you guys are talking about is you don't have anybody to replace him. The reality is there was somebody to replace Jeff. If Byron had agreed to do it on a temporary basis, and then we could have got someone. And at the end of the day, if no one was going to do it, I told the group, I said, I'll chair the stupid thing. And the reason why is people don't understand what the chairman's role is of the Central Committee. The chairman's role is to nothing more than to hold the meetings, make sure the motions get to the floor, make sure discussion, the decorum is up or held up. But they don't get to decide whether a motion can come forward or not. They believe they can.
Jeff Corcoran believes he can. I don't think Dennis Cooper believed he could. Dennis Cooper believed he had to. Now, there was funky shit went on then, but not 20% of what Jeff Corcoran does. Anybody with Dennis Cooper, the biggest thing previously was if you had a motion, he wanted you to have a copy for him, like 2 copies that you gave him at the beginning of the meeting of the written out motion, which, by the way, a lot of people on Central Committee would just have trouble doing that, getting a written out motion, but submit it in advance so that he could read it and it could be in the minutes correctly. That was what Dennis Cooper did. But I don't recall him, Jeff Corcoran just refuses to allow motions. He'll just declare we're not having any motions between now and the election.
Well, there's several things Jeff Corcoran did that he shouldn't have. It's not the committee chair's responsibility to do anything with the Lincoln Reagan dinner. They can assist, they can put committees together to help, but to actual run it belongs on the party chair. That is an executive committee party chair, the spend, all of that. And Jeff injected himself in the Lincoln dinner, not this past one because we didn't have one, but the previous one, even down to the endorsement meeting. Jeff started making up rules in the endorsement meeting that were like, we voted on Gene and Adam as one vote.
We also started voting before the official start time of the meeting.
Correct. I mean, it was such a disaster. And there's a reason why the committee chairman, that's not your role. You're not supposed to be doing half the stuff Jeff's doing. If we had a committee chair, people think, man, it's so much work to be a committee chair. It really isn't. It isn't. Your secretary's creating the agenda. You approve the agenda. You hold the meeting. Make sure people aren't taking 20 to 25 minutes to give subcommittee reports, which absolutely wants to make me put my head.
We love our Michael Logue subcommittee reports.
It's 25 minutes.
We like it. We like them so much we want to hear the same exact report at the next meeting. It was so good the first time. I want to hear it again.
The idea is if your committee needs 25 to 30 minutes to deliver an update, then you go and call a separate meeting, and those that want to know that information can attend that meeting. But you don't come. It's like if you go, Chris, working in corporate America, if you go to an executive update meeting where you're meeting with the execs to give an update on a program, you don't go into the granular details. You have a high level dashboard, and you get a couple of minutes per project to give an update, and it's like red, yellow, green status. Move next. Yellow, green status.
I want to get back to some Jeff Corcoranisms, little stories that I think are funny, and we might think of some other ones, but you're making me think of a few of them. So when Jeff became Central Committee Chair, one of the things he wanted to do was go to the businesses and get them to have an ID card that we would all have, and go to the local businesses that people that were on the Republican Central Committee should get a 10% discount by showing their secret card. I think the horse trader thing probably does this kind of deal. It's crooked as hell. And how would you feel if you were a citizen saying the Republican Party, like the mafia, shakes down businesses to give its members of its committee a discount? But this card thing, that kind of died. Okay, the other thing is Bill, you mentioned the disastrous endorsement meeting that went till what time in the morning did it go? It's
1 o'clock at least.
It was it was unbelievable. Now, endorsement meetings, so people know how they used to work, was you have a number of attendees at the beginning, and you say that vote, whatever that is, 60%. It says there's 100 people. So you need 60 votes to get endorsed. That number does not change the whole night. And then the meeting goes, and people get 3 minutes, 4 minutes, so on and so forth. But then the candidates that are going to be towards the end, they want the meeting to move along, because if people leave, it gets the 60 votes gets to be a higher percentage. So there's a natural pressure to keep moving. Mm-hmm. I think Jeff Corcoran intentionally made the meeting go unbelievably long. He put some of the key races. We normally would put key races like Congress, governor
up front
early, so those people could leave, because a lot of times they weren't. But he intentionally made it take forever. And then what's his answer? And this is why I know this guy is an effing Democrat in his heart. Was, well, we need to have electronic voting. The thing that held up the meeting was the voting. No, the thing that held up the meeting was having no fucking time limits on anything. And
it's an embarrassment. It was an embarrassment. We have our current senator who came down for endorsement, kept asking me, are we going to get to the endorsement? I mean, he'd been down there for hours, and you don't usually make those candidates sit there. They got a busy agenda. I mean,
right.
He had to be in another place the next day, and he's out there till 10, 11 o'clock in Claremont County, and he's got to be back home. It's just disrespectful. And I still stay in contact with Bernie now. I mean, he's made good on his commitments that you need to talk to him. You can call and talk to him. They still make jokes about that endorsement meeting. That's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that those level politicians in that kind of office sticks in their brain at how embarrassing our endorsement meeting was. It comes down, he'll say something like, well, that debate wasn't as bad as the Claremont County endorsement meeting. It's just so embarrassing.
I made my little tickler list of things that I could remember, little stories. I remembered the thing about the cards for a discount. it just tells you the ethical mindset of Jeff Corcoran that
Right.
that we should go shake down the businesses to give us a discount. We talked a lot on this call. I'm just looking at some of these hearings. The rigging of the Trish Lambeck trial, that's Jeff Corcoran all over it type thing. So I don't want to go into the Trish Lambeck thing, but you might want to mention, I think you guys are, was it Robert, that saw somehow Jeff Corcoran's going into the back room before the trial.
I did too. So it was crazy. So Corcoran comes in. There's actually a story out there now about missing cowboy hat because he came in with a cowboy hat but left without it. So you guys will get an opportunity to read that story. It's a short story. It's pretty funny.
Did he actually forget a cowboy hat somewhere?
That's what I was told. That was the
for people that don't know, Jeff Corcoran fancies himself some sort of cowboy. And so
the story,
him coming to court and he's wearing it's like we live in Dodge City or something. He's dressed like a cowboy. Under it, he has a suit. And the funny thing, he probably knows this. The other lawyers fucking laugh about what a clown he is behind his back.
Well, he's not much of an attorney from what I hear. But back to the court. So the Trish Lambeck trial, I don't believe it's over. I know that they all think it is, but I think that the bar should be investigating this, or the attorney general, or potentially the feds. They absolutely threw a criminal trial. There's not a judge that I have talked to that I know that has said that wasn't a thrown trial. Everybody has agreed thus far that I've spoken to has said that, yeah, that definitely was thrown. Because you would never, ever in a million years, even attorneys that I've talked to, you would never, if there was a criminal act and you're a prosecutor, you want to win the case. So if you have a key witness sitting in the crowd, you would call them to the stand. That is the most insane thing.
So just for frame of reference, not to go, we've covered this on a couple of these calls. Imagine, if you will, effectively a criminal case where it's going to come down to a he said, she said between the two people involved. But you have an eyewitness that will corroborate the account of one of the two people. But you don't call that person, and for some asinine, it doesn't even make any sense. I'll tell you, the only reason you don't call that person is you want to throw the trial.
And
you want to make sure that can be easily a reasonable doubt that this never happened, because you don't even call the person that will testify, I watched it happen, I watched it being intentional.
And what's even worse is Croswell in the closing argument brought up the fact that there were no witnesses even called that saw it. Like he used
because he knew
that,
it was coming. Probably
he exactly knew it was coming. And back to the readings with Corcoran. When Corcoran came in, he went to the back and it was Anita Beckman's courtroom, and she was out on medical leave. Her courtroom was locked. The deputy came over, unlocked the courtroom door. And Jeff Corcoran went back there. And I was in the courtroom, and the judge called counsel back. So the prosecutor and Croswell went back with the judge. Corcoran was back there at that time. Then they came back. I walked outside to let the guys know that everybody had been back. And here comes Corcoran out of that courtroom that was locked after everybody had come back. There's no way that was a coincidence. And there was no reason for somebody like him to be in a locked courtroom. He was in the back. Though they were cooking.
He wasn't counsel of record at this point in time. He was originally counsel of record for Trish Lambeck because he likes people that beat other people.
And what's even crazy is, so Robert Peters did a records request for the video cameras in that courtroom in the hall. They returned a video request for adult probation's camera, the outdoor camera, but they did not give him the videos that he requested. He still hasn't gotten them. I'm telling you, the feds have to investigate that.
By the way, I can tell you what's going to happen with that. Another crooked thing, Brian Shrive, we should do a show on Brian Shrive, is what they're going to tell him is, oh, we only keep the videos for 30 days where they're all gone now. That's what happened with Kramig. That's what happened with Kramig.
They deleted the cameras.
So they only, every government thing, just in case people don't know this, they have a record retention schedule. Sometimes there's a statutory requirement to keep it for a year, 2 years, 3 years, forever. But they have a records retention schedule in the courthouse to basically only keep the video for 30 days. So after 30 days, it's gone now. And so the funny part, I don't want to go on a sidebar, but in the Kramig thing, They never interviewed Jason Nagel till after all the video was for sure gone.
See,
So
and the
that's
people
how
that are in
corrupt
charge
this
of that,
is. You know, like wait to make sure we've purged all the records that could contradict what somebody says.
I
On
think
the other
that we
hand,
need
you know, if it was a real investigation with Kramig, by the way, don't you think law enforcement would be asking for the videos in the building?
of course, that's what I just think the bottom line is there were a lot of things that were eye opening and how the courts are ran, and there are judges in this county that don't agree with what's going on, but nobody stands up. Nobody. I mean, these people could write letters to the attorney general. They could write letters to Sharon Kennedy. I think that these guys should be disbarred for anybody involved in that trial,
Well,
including Jeff Corcoran should be disbarred.
this is why people don't have faith in the system.
Right.
And you know, and the funny part is I never knew until I got involved in stuff. I never really had a strong opinion on the justice system. My opinion right now is rigged, corrupt, and God only knows what happens to people that are just in the system, you know, regular people in the system, if you know what I'm saying, Bill.
Yeah.
I mean, it is so political, corrupt, you know, it's stunning. I want to go to something else here. One of the things, and these are not the things, but Jeff Corcoran had an idea in this last election, and Jeff can pretty much do whatever he wants, and then, you know, the party afterwards says it was okay. But he had this idea of having these signs, you know, these signs that say like freedom, liberty, all the things that it's almost humorous to think Jeff Corcoran, for example, a sign that said free speech, you know, a sign that said, what were some of them? Israel, you know, like we stand for, you know, this. So they made all these signs. They cost an pretty much outrageous amount of money. When it happened, you know, I made a joke out of it, and I made the alternate signs, like the Corcoran stand for Orwellian world, Tammany Hall, which means corrupt politics, big government, censorship, horny judges because they protected Kramig, you know, the cover-ups, you know, this is patronage. That's all what they stand for. But they assault. Okay, here you go. This is for Tina. The Corcoran stand for assault, you know, so cronyism, you know, those were the ones I made, but he made those signs. And Bill, you and Louisa went around, we know the county looking for signs, putting up signs. You probably saw a ton of those signs because the Republican community was so proud of the Jeff Corcoran signs.
You know, they had so many of those signs that never even got put out. They were just sitting in the back of the room. And when you did see one, I was with somebody putting signs out. I think it was Angie. Angie was helping me put signs out, and we drove past, and she's like, "What did that say?" You couldn't even read it. So, like, she didn't know what it said because she couldn't even read it. It's so small.
Well, you know, my wife's an artist, right? So I had her when she did these. I'm like, make sure you do everything like it is. Which you notice, if you pay attention to this, an artist would bother them. The stand for is not straight; it's crooked to the box it's in. You know, like things not like so the Corcoran signs were all like not. They're like not they're all caterwauled. They weren't quite right. You couldn't read them. To your point, they had a lot of words on them for driving by, and nobody put them up. Andy Capel tried to give them out and well, then it was going to be you needed to sign them out because you're going to bring them back because we're going to use these forever. But Andy Capel tried to give them out at the Union Township Republican Central Committee meeting, and I didn't see hardly anybody take any of them. They all just sat there, and he put them back in his car.
So it's a waste of money, and you know, and the Republican Party's trying to save up money. We could have sent mailers out with the money we spent on those stupid signs. We could have sent more stuff out. I think the whole thing needs an overhaul. That's why we have that reform, you know, pack. And I'm telling you, 2026 will be here before you know it. I mean, we're already in 2025, and it takes at least a year or more to take over every seat and pull kind of what the Tea Party did. It's going to take a lot of effort and help to get the word out, because Union Township, Miami Township, Goshen, some of the larger areas, they're going to require some hand-holding to make sure all the people that are running can beat out the people that are running in those seats. It takes poll workers working those polls and handing out cards saying, here are the non-swamp candidates. And everybody on that central committee that supported Jeff Corcoran, every single individual, the Kleins, Randy and Susan Klein, which everybody thinks so highly of them. I'm not saying they're not good people, but if you're a coward and you don't stand up for what's right, then you need to go. Especially when you're not vested in here, you're gone at least 50% of the time. How can you stand for a guy that has a history of hosing people and being self-centric in every place he's been? I'm telling you, when
Greg Simpson was the party chair before Corcoran was the Central Committee chair. But I just saw this in my Facebook thing. This is from a graphic that had some quotes from a Jeff Corcoran note in November of 2023. So he sent out a note, and I had to read this while you were talking. He was praising Rona McDaniel. You know how well she worked out as RNC chair. You know, the red waves that never happened. That's Rona. Okay. But these were quotes in the note because he belittles Central Committee members that you're not here to think. You're here to do whatever I tell you. So these are quotes from his own note. We are a turnout machine. We are not the messenger. So this is the Central Committee people. There are those on the Republican Central Committee, mostly new members, that have struggled with this reality that you're supposed to shut up, sit down, and be a chair moistener and do whatever Jeff tells you. They still argue we should be taking positions on issues. By the way, Jeff Corcoran famously came to a Union Township meeting when he was trying to be chair and talk, and he had a truism or a Freudian slip where he said, we need to quit talking about issues like abortion. Okay. Were you at that meeting when he said that? Like Mark Fawcett asked a question and Jeff responded like, well, we need to not talk about those kind of issues.
I believe so, but he doesn't believe that the Central Committee should concern themselves with any issue, that they should just be about endorsing candidates and nothing
and
more.
Getting people to vote for the candidates that are, the CCRCC, I'll finish up here, must be focused on turning out our voters, winning campaigns, not trying to wag the dog by making issue statements or second guessing our elected officials. That is classic for what happened not that long after that with Jesse Kramick, right? We should not second guess. We got horn dog perverts in office. Don't second guess. Maybe we get another Archie Wilson. Don't second guess. He likes prostitutes and drugs. He was endorsed. Let it go the other way. Ignore it. Those quotes to this day embody the way Jeff Corcoran is, that you protect the people, these people, regardless of what they do. And if they do a good job or a bad job, that's not what matters. What matters is just that you have power. So I put here, you've talked about this. I really don't know anything about the Corcoran Christmas party. Do you want to talk any about the Corcoran Christmas party and the Illuminati?
Well, I'll first start off by saying this. If you went to the Corcoran Christmas party, I have no respect for you. In fact, there's a gentleman that I was really close to and friends with on Central Committee that I won't talk to right now because they decided to go to that stupid party. I do not have any respect for people that say, oh, we want change. Oh, I don't agree that Jeff Corcoran did this. If you know that trial was thrown and you know that Jeff Corcoran suspended a member improperly and Chris's suspension was an improper process, people were lied to. We were absolutely lied to on Chris's suspension. Whether Chris should be suspended or not, that's not the question on the table right here. The question is, was the suspension, the process itself, correct? And it was not correct. People were lied to. The reason his suspension was. If you know all of that and you still go to that man's party and drink his alcohol and eat his food and act like he's the best thing in the world and you promote that nonsense, I have no respect for you. That includes every elected official that stepped foot in that party. How can you sit here and talk about how bad things are or you don't agree with things, but you're going to look the other way just so you can go to this party? I mean, that's pathetic. And there's so many elected officials that show up to these parties. So many. I have no respect for people that do that. And it becomes a social like a social gathering. Oh, well, you know, I'll get to see Matt Byrne will be there, and
He's an appeals court judge.
Yeah, I mean,
stay the hell away from politics, not be going to parties with swamp creatures.
Correct. Like it's one thing if you go to a party that's held at a public place and it's everybody's there. This is Jeff Corcoran's private home, and he literally gets off on having this party about the amount of people that show up. He really does. By the time you get there, it's 8:30, he's already drunk. He's already fallen over himself, drunk. It's embarrassing. I went before my eyes were open. I went to his party, and it was just a lot of people that you wouldn't think would be there were there. And you're condoning this behavior when you step foot and support somebody. But yeah, the Corcoran party is nothing but a stroke the Corcoran ego is all it really is.
Well, there would be, I don't know what kind of road he lives on, but there would be nothing illegal if you knew when it was of filming people coming and going from the street to see who exactly goes to this. Because like an appeals court judge should be staying the hell away from Jeff Corcoran.
Correct.
Not showing up at a drunk Corcoran fest for Christmas. I'm sure Jeff spends a lot of time worrying about Christ. One of the other things I had down here was a classic thing was that the sheriff's office, when Greg Simpson was threatening my son and me, or not him, remember it was unknown people that were telling him,
right.
Goombas that approached him all over the place. The sheriff's office basically had we've talked about it before, but Simpson lied up, down, left, right, every direction. Simpson lied, right? He told stories opposite to recorded audio of a phone call they had with him. He told stories about things in the Rife building in Columbus that were refuted by the actual video that was of the Rife building in Columbus. The famous thing when he was being interviewed is the other detective comes in, is it Chris Allen comes in and says, basically, you're lying. We know you're lying. I guess he was watching out in the hallway because they can watch the interview room. You're lying. We know you're lying. Like, knock it off. And then Simpson's like, am I under arrest? And so the sheriff's office, I don't know. I assume they should be. Bill, you tell me they are. They should be very upset that Simpson was never prosecuted, that they for the lies. And then there was a cover up that involved a completely bogus Mark Tacolvi special with Mike Moser, the prosecutor for Butler County. But what's my story that gets here involving our friend Jeff Corcoran? What happened after this is that's when Jeff Corcoran promoted Greg Simpson, the pathological liar, lies to the authorities, had done so before, to his chaplain status of he's going to say prayers at all the meetings. It pisses Chris Stratton, the new sheriff, off to the point that he resigns the committee over it. Because it basically is Jeff Corcoran saying, you better get fucking in line. Okay? Because the people that do what they're told, like Greg Simpson, they're the people that are going to be up here. If you don't play the game, you're going to be down here. But it was basically, I think, taken by Chris Stratton, and I would take it that way too, as rubbing it in their face that Greg Simpson walked when Greg Simpson, I guarantee, don't you think, Bill, that if you and I did the same thing, we would be getting to spend some time wearing an orange suit.
Absolutely.
We would absolutely be. Not Greg Simpson, though. He's protected.
I think that we have a problem in this county where lying to the police. I actually just had a meeting about this. I think I sent you a copy of my email about the fact that we allow this to continue when we allow people to be dishonest in the legal system. For example, the ex parte hearings. Ex parte means one-sided. That's what it means. And when you go down and get an let's say that your neighbor, you're outside getting your mail and you cuss your neighbor out because your neighbor parked in your yard, and their neighbor goes down to the court and says they threatened to kill me, and they're given a temporary protection order. They can come in, take your weapons away from you, They can demand all kinds of things with those temporary orders. The sheriff's department shows up to your door, and you could, as much as to hand your firearms over. They could demand that. And there's all these sections in a protection order that says you can't come within this many feet. You can't be in the same place. All based on some fabricated story that somebody went down. It also happens in domestic court where you can come down to try to get temporary full custody of your kids. You can lie and say that your ex-husband threatened to kill you and your kids and make up a story. That's fine. You're like, well, okay, if they lie, they're going to get caught. You're right. Normally they would get caught, but what happens is within 30 days you have a hearing, and then now it's no longer ex parte. The other side has an opportunity to say their side. You get to court and they're like, I never said that. The burden of proof is on the person to prove that that statement was said in the hearing, and if they don't prove that, dismissed, protection order dismissed. But nobody comes back and says, but that person lied to get the protection order up front. We have a problem accepting dishonesty in this county. I've seen it with Corcoran. I've seen it with Simpson. I've seen it with a few other people. I won't name names right now, but I've seen it with several other cases that I've intimately been involved in where people have lied to try to get things done. And then I actually, on 2 of these cases, have went and pursued and pushed for those people to be charged for lying, and it was thrown under the rug. It was no big deal. That's the problem. We have no integrity and ethics in the justice system.
Well,
a Jesse Kremick sleeping with his assistant is just a day at the park. I mean, it's no big deal because we don't believe in ethics and integrity in the legal system in here at Claremont County anymore.
Well, that thing with the protection order, remember back in the day, David Ubel tried to get a protection order with me. There was a temporary protection order, and then he dropped it. It was totally bullshit. But the funny part was, you probably know this, in a protection order, you have to, at least if you were writing a protection order, like if I wanted to get a protection order against you, Bill, I have to put in the thing that I feel like I'm in danger, threatened, violence, or you're mentally doing something to me to cause me to have a mental breakdown. I can't work, that kind of thing. Ubel had none of that in his. His thing was literally like, he asked me hard questions I don't want to answer. That was like literally his, I need a protection order because he's asking me questions I don't want to answer. He's an elected official, a commissioner. He was the head of the party. Well, so what does he do? They rubber stamp, here's your protection order. And then he drops it right before the hearing. And to your point, I know I'm on a tangent, no repercussions for, I think I missed 1 or 2 meetings because of this, no repercussions whatsoever in the whole thing. Hey, I got couple other things here before we call it a day. One of the things there's 2 things I have, you might have some, is I also want to remind people, put this out here, that Jeff Corcoran somehow became the person emblematic of being the Claremont GOP's representative at the convention for Trump in 2024. And so here's Jeff at the convention. Here's his daughters at the convention too. Here's Jeff with Mr. Tassel. Remember, disgraced chairman who went against an endorsed candidate, right? Remember, Bill, if you and I were in something and whatever, and we ran for office against an endorsed candidate, that's you can't do that, right? That's a fatal flaw, but not Mr. Tassel. He's sitting here with them, with the Corcorans. Michael Logue, by the way, was at this too. He was one of our Michael Logue, Jeff Corcoran, Greg Simpson. Those were our people for the Claremont GOP at the convention. Not, for example, anybody on the Trump team. Okay. Not, for example, anything that came before the committee that I'm aware of. The committee never got asked to give input on this.
Jeff didn't do anything. He didn't do anything.
He didn't have a Trump sign, did he?
He didn't even have a Trump sign in his yard. And then he finally put a Trump sign, but no other sign. And then we called it out, and then we started seeing a couple of other signs. But yeah, it's absolutely embarrassing. And then, Mike lives in Polo Fields, and he'll say, well, it's against the HOA to put signs out. Guess what? There hasn't been an election
In the 5 years I lived at Polo Fields, there never was one election I didn't have signs in my yard. Because there's a strategy to it. You can put signs in your yard, just going to get a letter, and they give you 30 days to remove the sign. At that point, election's over, done. That's a cop out. I'm telling you, these are cop out BS excuses, and we got to start calling these people out and get rid of them. Because
it's funny you say that. Somebody in Polo Fields also told me, like, oh, all you got to do on the signs is you put them out like 30 days before the election. Even if they are 40 days, you'll get a letter saying it like 10 days later, and you get 30 days. So you got 40 days to take them down.
You do,
so,
and I'm right in a busy intersection. And Kyle has a question. Why did they get to go? Well, Kyle, they got to go because they're inside swamp creatures tied into people at the ORP that got them tickets to go.
The thing that you got to appreciate is, and how Jeff Corcoran got where he is so in Claremont County so quick is something, but you got to appreciate it is a 2-tier system. Okay. There are the insiders and there are everybody. Might be 3 tiers, Bill. There's the insiders. There's the outsiders. You and I would be outsiders. Like, clearly, everybody in the middle, you're just a chair moistener. You don't know that this is going on. By the way, have you heard this? I have heard, and I called the Board of Elections, that I know, and they confirmed Rick Grant had a medical issue. I asked Stephanie Height, did he have a stroke? Rick Grant is the vice chair of the party. He's on the Board of Elections. We got a note on the committee that there's going to have to be something about a Board of Elections appointment. I called Stephanie Height because I had heard that Rick Grant had a medical issue, and I'll tell you what I heard. I asked her, is this true? She said she didn't know, but she knew that he had a medical issue, okay? You'd think you would know, like if you're Stephanie Height. She probably knows. I don't know. Like, you think you know. I was told he had a stroke. I don't know what he actually happened. I know from Stephanie Height there is a medical issue. I don't know what that is. The rumor I heard was that it was a stroke. Why would we not know that on the Central Committee right now? Because they got to figure out in the back room who's going to take the position so that it's all ready before it ever gets known to the Central Committee members that somebody on the Board of Elections maybe can't continue to serve on the Board of Elections. I wish Rick Grant the best. I wish him good health. I don't know what's going on, but just mark it right now. I'm saying this 9:55 p.m. on January 9th, that my understanding is there's been some sort of medical issue. The rumor I heard was a stroke. I don't know, but nothing would surprise me that the reason we don't know what the detail is because they're figuring out in the back room who's going to be the next person on the Board of Elections. They don't want, people that are maybe listening to this call to know that there's going to be an opening, because they only want their pre-picked people to be. So there is a 2-tier system. Whether it is Jeff probably has a card where he gets 10% off at businesses like it, there's who gets to go to the party, who gets to go to this, it's a 2-tier system. Okay. If Jeff, think about this. If Jeff, had somebody having a party, like we used to have a lot of parties at our house and stuff like this, but don't you think that the party, you would think at least it would cross your mind, hey, maybe the party should have a Christmas party for the members, and not just some dumb thing where you sit at the headquarters on uncomfortable chairs with no, whatever, like, something that was more fun. Well, hell, I guess some of that's like a Lincoln Day, but we didn't have a Lincoln Day. And I guess we're not, are we going to have a Lincoln Day this year? Like, because normally there would be, you'd know about it by now. So, I've hit all the points that I had. We've hit all the points. We together have hit all the points I had on my list, except one. Are there other things that any little stories, Jeff Corcoranisms that you have that we haven't hit on?
I mean, when Jeff first joined the committee, and I was on the side of supporting that, we had hours. I mean, I had one phone call with Jeff that was almost 3 hours long. And I really did make an effort to try to help guide him, give him advice. For example, one of the things I said we should do, we should have meetings at the Holiday Inn quarterly and open it up for everybody to come speak to their Central Committee members, all the Republican voters, invite them in. We need to hear from the voter base. and also include, opportunities to network with the voters. I suggested that. I suggested having a vetting committee that any motion can come to the floor, but we should vet the legality of the motion, because we have a history of passing motions that violate ORC, and that we can't have that. We should have a vetting committee that has attorneys on it. We have several attorneys in the Central Committee. They could easily vet the motions to make sure they're compliant with ORC, and that should be the only reason a chairman should say that to quash a motion is if it violates Ohio law. That should be the only.
Or our governing document or whatever, something
correct.
that was.
But outside of that, every motion should be gone to the floor and voted on. Period.
Right.
I spent so much time trying to explain to him why people feel the way they do about him, and every time it was his ego. I know more than you. I know more. I've been doing this way longer than you. And he's made the statement to me, there's nobody on that committee that knows politics more than me. He's made that statement to me on more than one occasion. The guy has got his head so far up his colon that you can see his eyes and his mouth. I mean,
and by the way, if you've known politics since 1976 and before, if you haven't noticed thing out there, I'm going to tell everybody a little tip, like look at my hat and stuff like that. People are fucking sick of politics as usual. We want people that don't know politics since 1976. We want people that are coming from other perspectives. People like Jeff Corcoran are the reason why they fit into the category of why we all get so frustrated that most Republicans are in politics are Democrats, but no Democrats are Republicans. Because they just are shapeshifters that do whatever, and they don't want to stand for anything. They just want. If you take one thing about all this is certain type of political people that have been around for a while, all they want is power. That's what they love is power, and they don't care about principles. They don't care. They have basically almost no ethics mostly. That they'll just do whatever, and they're cowards. They are cowards, and you hit on this, Bill, because like the judges, they're cowards. Like they won't do anything. They're afraid. And they can get away with it. And it's pathetic and it's disgusting. And it is an insult to our founding fathers. It is an insult to all the lives that have been shed to give us the Constitution and the rights that we have, that these clowns, can bastardize it.
I think that we have moved some judges around. I'm hoping that the judges we have in office will finally speak up or do something, because Jesse Kremick having a job at the state of Ohio is disgusting to me. The fact that he had to resign because of his infidelity, and he was given a job at the state
before we had a new judge.
Right, before we even had a new judge, he was hired on at the state. That's disgusting to me. Like, if he's willing to be that unethical at a county level, how unethical the checks and balances at the state level are less. It's less noticeable. You can get away with a lot more at the state level because you're not, the scrutiny isn't on you as much. Like you have Chris watching people in the county, and people are always scared to end up on his page. I can tell you, every elected official, that sinks in their head. Am I going to end up on Chris's page if I do what I'm going to do? They really do think that. That's not a bad thing. But where's the state level? You don't have that scrutiny. So if Jesse probably is going to have a strip club up in the Rhodes Tower, I mean, that's essentially what he's going to have done up there. If you're willing to do this at a county, at a park where kids are around, and the state hires you,
what's wrong with that? If you just want to get it on in a park, what's the big deal? You got to loosen up, Bill. Relax a little bit. No, I'm joking. If it is your, I'm the last person that's going to be a Me Too guy or something. But the concept of a subordinate and a judge, and the subordinate idolizes the judge, and the judge takes advantage of that for his own sexual gratification. That person should not be a judge. They should not collect any manner of taxpayer-paid paycheck.
Right.
That person is disgusting. Okay. And a person with kids doing this. Okay.
He shouldn't have been allowed to resign. He should have been terminated and disbarred.
So, any event, I had like two other things real quick because I wanted to address something. I put this on my Facebook page back in November 22nd, 2024. And this was after Louisa's vote, where everybody but one person stood with Louisa. People might know that, listen to this, where Louisa McQueen had sent, a resignation letter and then tried to retract it prior to the meeting. And there was a big, Jeff, of course, didn't want her to be able to retract it because he doesn't like her. But most everybody, except what I was told, Nathan Schuler, stood up supporting Louisa. Okay. And she didn't get, so then I put this out. At the moment I put this out, Dead Man Walking, I can tell you, I could take a lie detector test on this. My reaction, I told my wife when she made this graphic, because she makes a lot of my graphics, is ain't nothing going to happen to Jeff, but let's put this out. Okay. And by the way, Dead Man Walking, you brought this up to me, Bill. Dead Man Walking is not a term meaning violence. It's a common colloquial term. Okay. And why did I put it out if I thought nothing was really going to happen to him? Because, the thing, why is nothing going to happen to him? Because the very people that want to do something to him they always want to figure out a way to do it without any blood on their hands. They want to get somebody else to do it. And so just so when you're having the meeting next, I'm not going to be there, but on the 15th, just everybody know that people like Byron Baxter, James Kidwell, Tammy Brinkman, they all want to be part of a plot to get rid of Jeff, but they don't want any blood on their hands. They want to get somebody like Louisa to make motions and do this, and it is disgusting. And that whole body, and I would challenge personally for James and Byron to do their own dirty work, make the motions themselves. Don't get other people to do it. It's being complicit to sit there in these meetings, meeting after meeting, and then outside the building and other places talk about how you want somebody to get rid of Jeff. Anybody can do it in the meeting. They can make a motion.
Right.
They can, Jeff will try to fight it. But God damn, can we have, I apologize for using the Lord's name in vain, but can we have some balls? I mean, if we don't have balls to stand up to a petty tyrant, Jeff Corcoran, one of the things about petty tyrants like Jeff Corcoran, they don't actually really, they're not all that. They basically manipulate and control people, and then the people around them don't like them even, but they won't do anything. And, the meeting's coming up on the 15th, I guess, and I'm sure nothing's going to happen. And it's just repulsive that those people will sit there. The meetings are open. It's at the 197 East Main Street. You can go sit there, watch the meeting. There's a gallery. Watch the Profiles in Courage and ask, and then before the meeting, show up before the meeting starts and ask some of the Central Committee people standing out on the sidewalk. It's at 7:00. Ask them, why aren't you doing anything about Jeff Corcoran? Why don't you make the motion? Why don't you do this? It's just pathetic that people allow themselves to be manipulated. It's how the system gets so corrupted.
Yeah.
For me, that's why Donald Trump, but anyway, I rambled on there.
I couldn't take it anymore. I resigned. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to have any respect from the majority of the Central Committee members. And for me, to maintain integrity, I don't want to have my name in an organization and absolutely just dog it and how I feel about it. If I feel that strongly against an organization that I'm willing to say the things I've said, then I should be strong enough to not be a part of it. And the day that Jeff Corcoran is gone is the day I will look at coming back on to the Central Committee. But until that day, it's not going to happen.
So I want to leave us with this quote, here. I love this quote. And this is a George Washington quote. And we should think about this relating to Jeff Corcoran types, which there's a lot of. And this is from George Washington's farewell address. I've shared it many times. And he's so prescient. It's like Dwight Eisenhower talking about the military-industrial complex. So Washington says, however, political parties may now and then answer popular ends and they are likely in the course of time and things to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying afterwards the very engines which have lifted them to unjust dominion. And I think that applies to a lot of American politics right now. And I think it applies to, it's why the MAGA movement is so important, okay? And that becoming broader, and us realizing that a lot of the shiny object issues aren't really the issues. The issues is whether we have corruption in our system or not. But the concept of, what do you think, Bill? Do you think that describes Jeff Corcoran? Cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled.
To a T.
That is a perfect description. And I think it's good to be suspicious of all elected officials, you know. And by the way, us being suspicious of elected officials, here's the funny thing, it'll make them better elected officials. When they know, you know, J.C. Watt, who was a rep one time, said, you know, character is doing the right thing when nobody's looking. And, you know, when we're looking and we're being skeptical, I think it helps our elected officials actually be better elected officials. Keeps them honest. All of us need wise counsel. We need checks and balances. We need people that are going to straighten us out. All right. You got anything else you want to say about Jeff? So I want to thank everybody that joined us tonight for our, we'll have to figure out, we kind of freeform pick this topic. Bill, you and I need to figure out what the next topics are going to be in which order, and then we will take it from there. But thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Night.
Night.